You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting The Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Today, we head south.
Very far
south. We're going to cross the equator. We're heading south, but we are going to Uruguay today. Pastor James Sharp, serving the Lord in Uruguay, joining us in studio. Pastor Sharp, welcome.
It's great to be here.
Did I get my geography right?
Yeah, you did. We're below the equator. Pretty far south, man.
Pretty far south. So the climate is probably similar to here then, because you're that far away from the equator, right?
Yeah, it's about, I always compare it to like North Carolina because it's near the ocean. So you have kind of the ocean dominating things too. But yeah, it's a lot like temperate.
Well, thanks for coming to studio today. I know you're in St. Louis for some other meetings, and we finagled a little bit of time in studio so we could get an update because it's been a while since we've chatted. I think Christmas was last time we chatted. So what brings you to St. Louis?
I am here for the first in a series of church relations meetings with the Lutheran Church of Bolivia. I'm kind of the Synod's Bolivia expert, which is not as cool as it sounds probably, or not as fancy as it sounds, but
prestigious.
Prestigious. That's the word I was looking for. It is actually pretty cool. But yeah, so I'm here accompanying the president of the Lutheran Church of Bolivia, who is in the first round of talks about possibility of having altar and pulpit fellowship with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
What actually goes into those kind of discussions? I don't know if you're an expert on this, but like, what has that process been like, at least for the Lutheran Church Bolivia?
I think it depends on the church body that we're working with.
Sure.
The Lutheran Church of Bolivia was not planted by the LCMS. It was the work of the Norwegian Mission Society, and they don't have any formal ecclesiastical relations. It's just an independent church. And I believe about 10 years ago, they started reaching out, and first through the International Lutheran Council's meetings in Latin America, they became an associate member. I think it might be called like an observing member or something like that. And they recently became a full member of the ILC, which is an organization of confessional Lutheran churches all around the world. And through that, they kind of approached us to look at altar and pulpit fellowship. So it depends. When it's a church that's a daughter of the Missouri Synod, it's a little simpler because often they just pretty much copy and paste our Constitution, bylaws, and stuff like that. But this, because they come from a different Lutheran background, there might be some things that we're not 100% sure about. And so it's a process of telling us their story and going over their confessional documents and their Constitution and bylaws and stuff like that. So in this round, Pastor Limbert Fernandez, who is the president of the ECEL, it's called the Christian Evangelical Lutheran Church, gave some documents to our church relations people. Dr. Jonathan Shaw, who's the director of church relations in the president's office, was the leader of that, and had some meetings with other folks around here, introducing him to the director of international mission and the chief mission officer and folks like that. So there was a lot. It was in a lot of ways just kind of getting to know each other because we don't have a long history together like we would in some of our other sister churches.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Now, your work is in Uruguay primarily.
Yes,
so what is that
Uruguay.
Relationship with the work that you're doing and the church in Bolivia? Is there a relationship there?
Not necessarily. I'm the area facilitator for parts of South America.
Yep.
And I think my boss probably just looked on a map and said, Sharp is closest to Bolivia, so
makes you the expert.
That makes me the expert, yeah. So I've been to Bolivia a few times. I've been to their church assembly and some other activities there. So I do know Bolivia and the Bolivian church fairly well. So it was good to be able to serve in that way.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like getting to know, I mean, you've been spending the last few years learning to get to know new cultures, new people, and new Lutheran churches. What's that like to be in that role, to always be learning?
Well, I enjoy it. I mean, I'm a big nerd, so my pastime when I have time or to kill time, I do a lot of just Wikipedia surfing, just rando articles on Wikipedia. And so I enjoy learning new things. I always have. And I've always liked geography and cultures and languages and stuff like that. And one of the highlights that I had last time I was in Bolivia, I was at their church assembly, and during the worship services, they were singing in Quechua, the Inca language that is still spoken by probably about 30-40% of the folks in Bolivia. And so that was really cool. And it's really awesome because Quechua just adopted the Spanish alphabet. And so it's pronounced more or less like Spanish. So it's a language that if you already know Spanish, you have no idea what you're saying, but it's fairly easy to pronounce. So I could sing along with them. I absolutely had no idea what I was saying. I'm assuming it was like, Jesus loves me kind of stuff, but I'm just trusting them for the content, I suppose. But it was really fun to be able to sing hymns, sing praise songs and stuff like that to Jesus in this language that was the language of the Incas that's, thousands of years old. I really get a kick out of that.
Wow.
So cool.
Yeah.
So last time we caught up, you and your family spent some time with us talking about Christmas in Uruguay in a very secular culture.
Right.
It gave us some insights into that. What have you been up to since then?
We're working. Angie's probably teaching her 9th grade English class right now in Uruguay. She teaches in our San Pablo school. We have the Lutheran school there. So the girls are busy in class there. And, school started in the beginning of March. December, January, February is our summer vacation. And so school started again in March, and the girls and Angie are busy, especially with the school. And we're working on reopening our downtown mission in Montevideo. We closed the mission at the beginning of the pandemic because we didn't know how long it was going to work. There was a lot of ins and outs and what have yous with that. And it was a space that we had outgrown anyway, so we needed to move, and that kind of was the catalyst for that. So then the last really year or so, we've been trying to find a place that will work for us going forward, and thanks be to God, we've finally found that, and we're in the final negotiation. I hope the landlords aren't listening to this, that we really, really want that space, because you have to kind of play like you're not that interested, play hard to get sort of thing. So, but we're hoping to have the final negotiations for that when I get back and be able to start moving into that. And it's going to be a space that allows us to have a worship space that has classrooms where we're going to have English classes and theology classes and things like that, both as a matter for outreach and also to train new leaders and train lay people. And it's a really nice space right downtown Montevideo. And so I'm pretty excited about it. That's going to be the big thing when I get back.
How has the mission been growing? I know we talked about that a little bit, and we've been catching up with you for so long now that we've gotten all of these updates. What are some of the new things that are happening for you guys?
Well, we got the Josephs, Pastor Phil and Rachel, Deaconess Rachel Joseph, in the middle of last year, and so they've really been able to come into the team quickly. They really did a great job. Rachel had already served in Latin America. Phil had been a geo missionary in Africa, so they both had experience, and Phil really picked up the language very quickly, which was good. And so they've both really hit the ground running, and Phil will be working in a mission that I had been working in. We kind of had all been working in the east of Montevideo. It's a really growing suburban area. And Rachel has gotten started on a deaconess program for Uruguay as well through the seminary that the Synod operates in the Dominican Republic. They have an extension program for deaconess training, so we're pretty excited about that. So a lot of things are happening. We've dedicated a new center up north in the mission where we have an alliance missionary from Brazil serving. So compared to when we got there's just so much more going on than there was before, and it's neat to have been a part of that. I mean, I'm not responsible for all of it, but I am responsible for part of it, and it's pretty cool to be part of it.
Is that encouraging to see those partnerships continuing to grow and to see the team growing as well?
Yeah. I mean, you're we weren't starting from zero. We had a really big school and a very long-standing congregation there that wanted to grow and wanted to reach out and wanted to start new missions. And so we had a nice base to start with. But that was it, really. There was the church downtown and the school and the little mission that they had up in the north, and to see another mission up north and a building get built and a new mission started on the east side of town, and we're already talking about a couple other places where we'll be able to reach out, and we'll also start thinking about maybe having like an international service or something like that, having an English service in downtown Montevideo now that we're having tourists and stuff again. So, it's very encouraging to see that there have been fruits of your work. We don't always get that blessing, and so it's really neat to be able to see that.
You mentioned tourists. Tell me about the tourism industry. Is there a draw there? Are there particular sites in Montevideo? Or?
I always say that Uruguay is a neat place to stop by in between more interesting places. And that's kind of what a lot of the tourists are. We get a lot of folks that are on cruises. So the crew, they fly to Rio and get on the boat, and the boat stops in a few different places. And then a lot of times goes through the Straits of Magellan, and then they fly back from Chile. That's a pretty popular cruise route. We've actually had several American Lutherans who have stopped by and contacted us. I had one couple that was from Alexandria, Minnesota, I think, if I remember correctly. And they just reached out, and they happened to be there on a Sunday. And I went down and grabbed them and brought them to church, and it was really neat to be able to do that. But the big draw is just, I remember when the first time I went to Argentina in 1995 when I graduated from college, and I took the boat over to Uruguay just because I kind of thought it was funny. Like, oh, there's this little weird country that nobody's heard of, and nobody can really pronounce the name, and when will I ever go back to Uruguay? That's hilarious. And now I've lived there for 8 years, but Montevideo is a neat town. There's a little old city that's still kind of got the little colonial grid thing going, and statues. They love statues. There's some really awesome statues if you're into that in Montevideo, and in Punta del Este, which is about 2.5 hours to the east, it's where it starts to have beaches, and we get a lot of tourism from South America. A lot of Brazilians and Argentines historically have gone to Punta del Este. So, and then a lot of them are Lutherans. So, we're hoping to catch some of them. And now the European tourism is picking up again. So people just, it's kind of an out of the way place. A lot of people have heard of it now. And it's a neat place to stop by. It's actually a really nice base if somebody's going to spend like a month or two exploring South America, because the airport there is small and really easily manageable, and customs and immigration is pretty nice. And so, you can there are people that will maybe get an Airbnb or something like that and stay for 6 weeks, and then, fly to Peru for a few days and fly to Chile for a few days, or fly up to Rio for a couple days, but keep Montevideo as their base. And we're starting to see that happen a lot more too. So it was really cool. We actually, at Christmas time, we had a couple of Finnish Lutherans were in Uruguay for, I don't know, probably a couple months, and that they used Montevideo kind of as a base to explore other parts of South America. And it was really cool. It means a lot to people in these mission churches to have Lutherans from overseas there. It really, when you're in a small church and you're a minority of a minority of a minority, to have folks from outside come and seek you out because they share the same confession of faith is really cool. So, sorry, that was kind of a rando Wikipedia surfing sort of answer,
but I think that was an excellent insight into missionary life and Lutherans around the globe too. I think that was a really helpful insight. We're gonna learn more about life in Uruguay with the Reverend James Sharp in just a moment. You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
At Concordia University, Wisconsin, we believe you were created for a reason: to use your God-given gifts to help others, to live a life of self-sacrifice in a me-first world, to live a life that's uncommon. Whether you're taking one of 50-plus online programs or learning with us in person on the shores of Lake Michigan, you'll be equipped to make an uncommon impact. Learn more at cuw.edu. Concordia University, Wisconsin. Live uncommon.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Today we're talking with the Reverend James Sharp, serving the Lord in Uruguay. And we've been learning about some of the experiences you've had, visitors who've made Montevideo part of their trips when traveling around South America. Last time we talked in December, we learned about Christmas in the very secular culture of Uruguay. Most recently, Lent, Holy Week, and Easter.
Right.
What were some of the observations? How did you observe Lent, Holy Week, and Easter at your church? And then where does that fit in the culture in Uruguay?
So it's really weird because Uruguay was primarily settled by Spanish and Italian immigration, especially a lot of people from Galicia in Spain. And so they have those sort of ethnic traditions, and a lot of those involve eating fish during Lent and things like that, or vegetarian or fish-based dishes. And they're completely not religious anymore, but they still practice these kind of fasting and things like that. And they don't even realize it. It's just a tradition to eat cod on Good Friday or something like that. And it's weird because it's kind of the opposite of what I grew up with a lot of folks who were maybe even practicing Roman Catholics, for example, who didn't observe the fasting, but still went to church. And these are people that don't go to church, but still observe the fasting, which is really strange and kind of backwards. And in Uruguay, I think I said the same thing for Christmas. Christmas is officially a holiday, and it's called Family Day. And there's no buses and things like that. It's a day that's actually essentially illegal to make people work, with certain exceptions. And that kind of, in a lot of ways, ruins the Christmas celebration. We can't have service Christmas Day with all the people because they just can't get there because they need the buses and stuff like that. And they did the same thing with Holy Week and Easter. Holy Week is called Vacation Week in Uruguay, and Vacation Week every year just happens to be Holy Week. Isn't that great? And so a lot of times our lowest attended services are Palm Sunday and Easter, and then back in Christmas. And so, you have the Christer thing in the United States where you, for a lot of years, I think that's changing now, but you had people that pretty much only went to church on Christmas and Easter. And we have pretty much the opposite phenomenon, which is people who are pretty fairly regular, steady churchgoers who don't go to church on Christmas Day and Easter because of the way that the government has made it really difficult. And so because that's vacation week, so many businesses, the government offices and things like that, basically make their employees take that week as a vacation. So they don't have much choice. If they're going to take a family vacation, it's going to be that week. And one of the reasons why we want to start planning more churches around Uruguay is so that they have a place to go when they're on vacation. It's strange. In Paysandú, in the northern part of Uruguay, where we have a mission nearby, it's not called Vacation Week. It's called Beer Week. And in our neighborhood in the Prado where we are, they have kind of like a fairgrounds, a county fairgrounds, and they have what they call it Creole Week. And so it's kind of like a county fair with horses and demonstration of horsemanship and cows. And Angie was right at home back from her 4-H days there, going around and seeing all the sheep and the goats and the ducks and whatnot. But it's anything but Holy Week, and one of the things that I've tried to do intentionally is to call it Holy Week. When we're talking about that week, we call it Holy Week, especially in the church, but even outside the church. There's a reason why the government picked this week for that, and it's because it's Holy Week, and it's Holy Week because it's the week we remember the sacrifice and resurrection of Jesus. So, for our family, we try to make the same Lenten rhythms that we did in the United States, but the kids are excited because they're off school and stuff like that. It's hard to maintain it when the whole culture is kind of fighting against it, but we do what we can.
Yeah, that is just so interesting. And I mean, you've told these stories before, but every time it boggles my mind a little bit how different that culture is than what we're used to here. Like when we get to Easter here, even if you're not going to church, it's Easter. Everybody talks about Easter. Businesses are closed because it's Easter weekend. It's just a very different thing for the people in that culture. What do you do for your church? I know low attendance, but what do you do for like Palm Sunday, Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday? What kind of traditions do you have for the people that are able to come?
One of the awesome things is being in a country with actual palms.
Yeah.
Last year, we went a little crazy with the palms to the point where the people in the pews couldn't actually see the chancel very well.
Oops.
But if you're going to go all out, I guess. But so that's fun. We do procession with the kids and stuff like that. And it has, I will say, I got to say to their credit, a lot of folks have taken it to heart that, this is a week I need to be in church. And so it wasn't a terrible attendance. It was I would say average, not what you might expect. But, and then a lot of times we will just have one service during Holy Week that kind of is more like a passion service where we kind of do the whole passion thing. And then Easter, we usually have a breakfast or something like that. And, kind of traditional things that people do all over the world. But, and Easter does pick up a little bit because and once again, it's the opposite of here because, a lot of times, like you said, places are closed on Easter. Places that are usually open all the time are still closed on Easter here. And in Uruguay, it's different because Easter Sunday is the day when people are coming back from vacation week, right? Mm-hmm. So it's in a lot of ways just a normal Sunday. Everything that's normally closed is closed. Everything that's normally open is open because people are coming back from the beach or from up north in the hot springs that they go to. Or a lot of people like to travel abroad during Holy Week. So there's so much besides the seasons, which are also the opposite. It's weird how so many things are just pretty much the opposite of
that. Was what I was just thinking about. Like Lent literally means spring, but it's autumn for you.
Spring.
Yeah. And it's school just started at the beginning of March, whereas here, by the time you get to Easter break, it's like, all right, we just got a few weeks left to finish school, and it's spring, and it's been cold all winter, and now, the temperature is turning nice. And usually, depending on the date of Easter, vacation week is kind of like almost like Labor Day weekend, sort of. It's like the last burst of summer sort of thing. But, it was already starting to get cold before I left, and I guess it's really cold now. So I'm really looking forward to going back.
So you don't have like Easter bunnies, Easter eggs, or any of those traditions either then necessarily?
A little bit. They've picked up some of that. It's funny because the same with Christmas where they've picked up like icicles and snowflakes and stuff like that. It's like
it's just summer.
Yeah, American capitalism is just pert near undefeated the way that we just spread this garbage all around the world. We're really good at it. So they historically didn't have Santa Claus, but they do now. They historically didn't really have the Easter Bunny, which is more of a Germanic thing, and they do now. And it's a big thing to have these chocolate eggs. They're ridiculously expensive. They have these beautiful decorated chocolate eggs that are for sale all leading up to Easter, and then it's just like Easter candy or Halloween candy here. You go the week after Easter, and all of a sudden they're super cheap, and you can get these big fancy decorated, but they have like Oreo chocolate eggs, and they have filled with dulce de leche and all kinds of other stuff. But they do that a little bit, but mostly it's just not Easter. They don't even think about it, and they'll say Happy Easter, but they're not thinking Easter as resurrection of Christ in any way.
We have just a couple of minutes left. There are updates on what's happening in the Lord's work in Uruguay.
Really excited about how the school is growing and continuing to build its ministry. It's a really big school. We got about 1,200 kids, 100 kids, something like that. Angie, my wife, is teaching in the school. I'm pretty sure, I'm looking at my Outlook, that she is in English. Yes, she's in 9th grade English class right now as we speak. And her ministry in the school has been really well received. Everybody loves her. She's doing a great job. She's a great teacher. She's a fantastic teacher. And so the school administration and our headmaster, who's Pastor Mara Roll, one of my colleagues, are really hoping to get more American synodically trained teachers to work down there. So it's one of the other things I'm doing while I'm in the United States is begging teachers to come teach math and science and stuff in English in Uruguay at our school down there, because I really have a really cool dynamic ministry growing there and need more people to be part of that.
How can they learn more about the Lord's work in Uruguay?
LCMS.org/sharp. You get a connection with us. We were in Lutherans Engage the World, I think, in the winter issue. They had a pretty good article about us, and can find all kinds of things at international.lcms.org.
Very good. Our guest today, the Reverend James Sharp, serving the Lord in Uruguay. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour.
I always have a good time.
You've been listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.